Galatians 4, verses 4 and 5. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons. Well, my goal in this message is not exactly to give you a full explanation of Paul's letter to the Galatians, but I want to lean into this particular passage where it is very much related to the Christmas story. I want you to see how Jesus' birth was really like the most thrilling movie plot you could ever see. There's this main character whose mission it is to rescue a ton of people, and in order to do so, he must sneak into enemy territory. In the same way, at Christmas, we see God entering the world as a man in order to set humanity free. And in this time of year, which we often associate with giving gifts, these verses show us that the perfect giver gave us the perfect gift at the perfect time. Verse 4 again says, when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of woman, born under the law. When the fullness of time had come, or when it was the exact perfect moment in history according to God. Now, a lot of people will draw from the fact that this world that Jesus was born into had recently been conquered by Alexander the Great, and so everyone spoke his language, which was Greek. However, I'm not so sure that just that fact would mean that it's the perfect time for Jesus to come into the world. That did make it very easy to have a New Testament that was very easy to copy and send around and spread the word. I agree with that, and I believe God arranged that point. But I don't think that's what makes it the perfect time to send Jesus. Well, first, I would say I think Paul is looking back at Jesus' birth and saying that is the fullness of time because Jesus showed up at that time. Like, Jesus is what makes that time the best time. But we know that God chose the situation surrounding Jesus' birth to be the environment in which he would come. But if we really stop to think about it from our human perspective, no one in their right mind would look at this story and say, everything is going according to plan. Everything's right on schedule. Don't make the mistake of thinking that the first Christmas was picture perfect. Mary and Joseph came to Bethlehem to pay taxes in a census. She was pregnant, and Joseph took her on the road because the greedy government was requiring it. And meanwhile, the top Jewish leader in the land was on a mission to murder all the newborn males. Oh, and if you thought they'd at least get to find a decent hotel room in the city, you'd be wrong. But it's not like the inns at Bethlehem were anything nice to begin with. This was a small, run-down town where nothing significant ever happened, except the death of Rachel, Jacob's wife, in Genesis, and some stories about thieves and rapists from the book of Judges. Well, when this teenage mom's water eventually broke, it's not like there were hospitals or 21st century medicine to make the process smooth. No, this all took place in a barn or probably a cold, damp, and dark cave, as best we can tell. There was no comfortable or clean place for the mother to even lie down. It's a wonder that the baby Jesus and his mother, Mary, both didn't die that night. No baby should ever be born like this, let alone Jesus Christ himself. And all this to say, and yet, Paul can look back at this situation, and God can inspire him to say, this was the fullness of time. This was the perfect time for it to happen. It's unimaginable, really. It'd be much easier to accept that Jesus came down to earth at a time when there was caroling in the streets and generosity flowing from person to person, gift giving, meal sharing, and just a touch of snow on every tree. But truth be told, Christmas and this world we live in isn't always so glamorous. There are real rebels and lawbreakers out there, out in the world. But even more than that, there are real sinners in the church too. The world that Jesus came into wasn't and still isn't this winter wonderland that we sing about. And yet in God's mind, his plan unfolded exactly how he wanted it to. And it's not that God at just the right time sent some instructions or a checklist or a warning to the world. And it wasn't a card, a pie, or an ordinary Christmas gift either. Paul says God sent forth his Son. We see here God, who's normally outside of the law, outside of the world in one way of looking at it, or above the law, was born as a man, someone under the law. I mean, how many people would love to peek into heaven just to try to see God and see what he's up to? Well, at Christmas we learn that it turns out God has come into this world to reveal himself to you. And this means several things. For one, Jesus put on humanity. In the fullest sense, he did so. He became a baby boy who, like everyone else, needed diaper changes. I mean, compared to heaven, where he came from, Jesus wins the ugly sweater contest by putting on human flesh. He put on that dirty human body like you and I have and began living a life like you and I live, except his life goes in a drastically different direction than yours and mine. Because where we, under God's law, totally come up short, Jesus succeeds perfectly. See, we get a break from our work at Christmas, but for Jesus, Christmas, his birth, his arrival, his advent, his incarnation, is when his work on your behalf really began. And this is the purpose of that work in verse 5, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons. Well, those who are under the law, you don't want to make the mistake of thinking that is just Jewish people who received the Ten Commandments back in the Old Testament, because in the previous chapter, which is just mere sentences ago, in Galatians 3:28, Paul will say, there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. So then it wouldn't be right for him to say, well, Jesus is coming to redeem those who were under the law, meaning Israel, or meaning a Jewish person. No, there is neither Jew nor Greek. So what did Jesus come to do? What gift did he bring? And whose name is on the tag? Well, he's come to redeem and forgive those who don't deserve it. It's a gift, this forgiveness, that most people refuse to give. Okay, maybe some people forgive, but few of us are willing to associate with those who've sinned against us. We would never claim them as our friends or our family, but that's exactly what God does through Christ. He made it so that you can be his son, his daughter, his adopted child. In other places, this wording of adoption is actually related to just as Jesus Christ was raised again after he was dead, that we too will inherit that form of adoption as well. Sometimes adoption is used as a resurrection word. And that's what Jesus has come to do, is make it so that you can be God's adopted child. We don't normally trust other people with this type of forgiveness. Just like if you've seen the movie A Christmas Story, no one trusted Ralphie with a BB gun. Not his mom, not his teacher, not even the department store Santa. But if you watch to the end of the movie, you'll see that his father ends up giving him this gift that he wanted so badly. And in the same way, God, our Father, gives us this gift that we need so badly that we don't normally trust people with. Total and free forgiveness. That's what God has given to us in Jesus Christ. This gift is like an engagement ring. It makes a promise, but it's better than an engagement ring. It's like a free meal that meets someone's need, but it's better. It's like a brand new car that changes someone's life, but it's better. It's like a donated kidney that saves a life, but it's better. It's the perfect gift that dies for you in order to claim you and buy you back from sin, death, and the devil. And my question to you is, when did the world ever get such great news? That this baby boy born 2,000 years ago was sent to redeem all people, even the greedy ones, the dirty ones, and the murderers, like the people in the past history of Bethlehem. This dark side of Christmas, which Mary and Joseph lived through when their rulers were taking their money and trying to take their son's life, and there was no place for them to stay, and Mary had to give birth in this undesirable circumstance. That dark side of Christmas, and many of you are experiencing that dark side of Christmas, where everything just seems like sin is running rampant. There are circumstances that are breaking you down. Those things are actually the reason why Christmas exists. The dark side of Christmas, the sin. That's why Christmas exists. Think of Paul's words in 1 Timothy 1, where he calls himself the chief of sinners, and that Christ was sent into the world to save sinners. That is the chief purpose of Christmas, is because of the sin and the darkness that we experience, and that oftentimes gets highlighted this time of year when you go to a family function and you can't talk to a certain person because there's sin in between you, or people get jealous, or they waste their money, or whatever sin that you experience at Christmas, alcoholism, drunkenness, greed, theft, people steal at Christmas, those dark things, that's actually why Christmas exists. Now, as I've taught through Hosea, I've been showing, and Hosea himself has been explicitly saying that the earth is cursed because of sin. Well, Jesus, in the Christmas story, has appeared to reverse that curse and bring about a new creation. And that's why in that song, Joy to the World, it says that fields, floods, rocks, hills, and plains can repeat the sounding joy. Not because Christmas is just so picturesque, right? And it's just like a Pinterest board, and it's an Instagrammable moment, and it's picture perfect. That's not what makes people repeat the sounding joy at Christmas time. The reason why we can rejoice, along with the fields, floods, rocks, hills, and plains, is because humanity was in a bad place, but Jesus put the government on his shoulders. It took the weight of every sin on himself at the cross. And it's just like Kevin McAllister. Remember, he was saved from Harry and Marv by that old man Marley, who was a man with a bloodied hand at the beginning of the film. In the same way, you and I have a Savior who allowed his hands to be pierced for us. And friend, because of what he has done for you and for me, Jesus is the reason, not just for the season, but Jesus is the reason, period.